Hey there, it's Katie, otherwise known as the Frozen Tofu, Bazinga01, and possibly some other nicknames at some point. About a year and a half ago, I started writing a fic called Undeniable, and it feels like a lifetime ago. And I got totally absorbed in writing the story for a long time, and used it as an escape and a creative outlet when I really didn't have a lot else going on. But it got to the point where I had to let it go, and so I set it aside and labeled it discontinued, and a lot of people got really mad at me. And I moved on with other things in my life. But now everything's kind of coming back full circle, and I feel like if there's any time to just present the rest of the story, it's now. And I know some of you would probably rather me actually write it out, but that's not going to happen. Life is really busy now, in a good way, but at the same time I still want to put some closure out there. Maybe most of you don't care anymore, maybe some of you are like, why are you even bringing this up again? But just to put it out there, for those of you who are curious, here is the audio synopsis version of what would have happened in the rest of Undeniable. So, if you don't want to be spoiled, if you want to preserve your own headcanons of how it worked out, now would be the time to stop watching. So, the last chapter that I had published left it off where Rachel was going to be going to her surprise party with Quinn in Lima over winter break. And so, at that surprise party, basically what was going to happen was Finn was going to hear about it, had heard about it through some of the other Glee Club kids, decides to show up, and it's super awkward, and Santana tries to make him leave, but ultimately Rachel's like the bigger person and invites him in because she knows that she needs closure and all that stuff. So it makes Quinn really upset, even though she doesn't want to admit that she's upset. And basically what happens is that Rachel ends up having this conversation with Finn where Finn is like, I've missed you so much, and oh my gosh, we were so good together, and kind of that like nostalgic way that you know he hasn't really moved on from high school, because high school was a better time for him than where he's at right now, whereas Rachel's doing a lot better than she was in high school. And so it's kind of this like meeting of the minds where Rachel is looking at him and he's saying these things, and she's like realizes, wow, like I'm really not into you anymore, and she can say that like very, like, she believes that when she says it, and it's kind of her aha moment. And Finn is upset because he thinks he's going to give this big romantic speech and they're going to get back together and have this long distance relationship, and Rachel's like has no interest in that. And like, so you see the progress that she's made in her first semester with regards to Finn. And so then, as planned, later that night, Quinn stays the night, everyone else leaves. Rachel talks to Quinn about it and says how, basically, that she's moved on. And if you wonder why I keep looking down, this is my Undeniable notebook, and it has a lot of stuff in it, and details that I forgot I even came up with because I haven't looked at this thing in months. So if you wonder why I have to look down occasionally, that's why, because there's a lot of shit in here. But basically, so yeah, she spends the night, Rachel says, I'm over him, la-di-da. Then, skip forward a couple of days, we have this sleepover with Quinn, Rachel, Brittany, and Santana. And so they're all hanging out together, and because Rachel's on good terms with them, and you know, she developed that friendship with them, and she trusts them, so they're like, they start drinking, and they're just goofing off, and having a good time. And Quinn's limiting her intake because she's really scared to be drunk around Rachel because she doesn't trust herself. And so what ends up happening is Rachel, Brittany, and Santana are way more intoxicated than Quinn is, and they're all sitting there kind of talking and giggling and doing whatever. And of course, Brittany and Santana just like randomly start making out because they're them. And Rachel, in her drunk state, is just kind of like curiously watching them and isn't really embarrassed by it or blushing at all. And when they do separate, Rachel just looks at them and she's like, "What's that like, kissing girls?" And Quinn gets like she feels it a lot more than the rest of them do because she's less drunk. And Brittany's like, "Hey, do you want to try it?" And Rachel's like, "No, you're not really my type." And then that makes Quinn even feel like more uncomfortable. And then Brittany's like, "But Quinn's your type, right?" And yeah, so she's like, "Quinn's your type, right?" And then Rachel like just like giggles and kind of looks over at Quinn, and Quinn gets super upset and like rushes out of the room into the guest bedroom. I know, I'm an angst-whore. You know this after reading Undeniable, but she rushes out of the room. Rachel follows after her, and Rachel's still drunk, and Quinn's basically like, "You're drunk right now, so you don't realize how shitty that just was, but hopefully you'll feel bad about it in the morning, because like I can't do this right now." And so they go to sleep. Next morning, they wake up. Quinn's already out on like the back patio, cuddled up in a blanket, sipping her coffee. Rachel remembers what happened. She goes outside and they sit down together, and Rachel feels so bad about it, and Quinn's just like, "We need boundaries. Like, I thought I could be okay just like being your friend like it used to be and hugging you and touching you the same way, but like it's killing me and we need to have boundaries." And Rachel, of course, is like so upset because she's like trying to process, you know, her feelings for Quinn that have just come to the surface, and she's at that point where she's wanting to be closer to Quinn, but Quinn's like, "I can't do this, I need boundaries." And so Rachel agrees, and that's the way that they leave that. So then a few days later, in winter break, around Christmas time when everyone's having family over and doing all the holiday stuff, then Quinn is with the Fabrays at her house, and something comes up on the news related to like LGBT legal stuff in the media, because you know it's in the media all the time now, and several months have passed since then, and now we've moved on to Supreme Court stuff, but it was going to be something along those lines where it like sparked a conversation and like the group of people that are there, and Russell makes like a super homophobic comment and just goes on this like gay bashing rant basically, and Judy sits there and does nothing even though she knows obviously that Quinn's gay, and so Quinn like rushes out of the house and ends up going to Rachel's, and Quinn's there like crying on her front doorstep and basically is like, "I could have gone to Santana, but I didn't want to go to Santana." And Rachel is basically like, "Fuck this, no boundaries, I need to give you a hug." And so she gives her a hug, and Quinn is like so upset with herself, and she's like, "I always need you, and I don't know how to stop needing you." And Rachel just like doesn't say anything and just brings her into the house. And so it's late at night, and so they go upstairs, and her dads are already like in bed, so they just go up quietly to her bedroom, and she lets Quinn cry it out. And when she finds out kind of what happened and stuff, and like as she's like there with Quinn, like holding Quinn, laying down in their bed, Quinn finally starts like to drift off to sleep, and Rachel's like looking at her, and that's when she realizes that she's like totally fucked because she's so in love with Quinn, and this whole boundaries thing is never going to work for them, and she's going to have to tell her soon. And so then we transition into Puck and Rachel hanging out. While everyone else is doing Christmas stuff, Puck and Rachel meet up, and Puck was at the birthday party, so like Puck and Rachel are hanging out, ice skating, and Puck's like just straight up asks her, "So how long have you been into Quinn?" And Rachel like splutters and is like, "What the hell are you talking about?" And Puck is basically like, "Dude, it only took me like 15 minutes of being at that party to figure out that something's going on." And so Puck is kind of this like breath of fresh air injected into the story, and like a new perspective. And basically, with the relationship he has with Rachel, he's kind of plants that seed in her mind that much more that she needs to say something soon. And so, after that's happened, then, from then on, it's like they're going back to, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. They're going back to New York. And so, yeah, as you can see, like, a lot of stuff happens over winter break. Like, there would have been a lot of stuff before winter break. So when they get back to New York City, it's on the 30th, because, you know, they were going back for New Year's Eve. And, so they're there, and they're back in the dorm room, and, Quinn was going to be using Naomi's bed, but she feels like super weird, and so it ends up coming full circle where they do that whole argument about the sleeping on the floor, and finally Rachel's like, oh my god, just get in my bed, like, we're not doing this anymore. And so they're laying in Rachel's bed together, and Quinn falls asleep, and Rachel's just kind of laying there, and it kind of parallels what had happened when Quinn was upset just a few nights before, except Quinn's not upset anymore. She just looks very peaceful, and Rachel is just like looking at her and just kind of whispers to herself, like, I'm falling so hard for you, Quinn Fabray. Except before in the story it's been worked in several times that Quinn's a light sleeper. And so what Rachel doesn't know is that Quinn hears her, and Quinn continues to pretend to be asleep. And so they wake up on New Year's Eve day, and Quinn's like really tense around Rachel, and Rachel can't figure out why. And like, so Rachel goes to shower, comes back into the room, Quinn's still being super awkward, and Rachel's like, okay, what the heck is going on? And finally Quinn snaps, and she just gets so upset. And she's like, what kind of mind games are you playing? And like she thought basically that Rachel was just like messing around last night. Like, she's like so confused by what's going on. And Quinn just keeps ranting and saying like, how can you be so cruel and all this stuff, and after everything that's gone on, and there's still all this shit happening, and like is basically losing it. And like Rachel keeps trying to interject into the conversation, but Quinn's like not even letting her get a word in, because she's just so upset and keeps on ranting. And like Rachel, in like a split second in her mind before she really thinks through it, like the only way to get like Quinn to shut up and realize like what she really means is for Rachel to kiss her. And so that's how their first kiss happens, in her room, New Year's Eve day morning. And Quinn just sort of freezes, and then like Rachel pulls back, and they're looking at each other, and then Quinn's just like silent, and they're like looking at each other, and Rachel's like, okay, okay. And so then they kind of keep kissing, whatever, and then Quinn's like, wait, what's going on, what's whatever, and she's just like a total dork about it. And they end up having a long conversation about everything, where Rachel lays it all out on the table, and they go out together that night for New Year's Eve, and they do kiss at midnight, but that's not when their first kiss was, the kiss at midnight. It's actually earlier that day. And so they spend the rest of their winter break together in New York, like exploring this new thing that's like finally happening, and they're really adorkable and like taking it slow and not really sure how to be around each other now, like after so much time of this like building up. They're like, ah, you know, they're just Quinn and Rachel. So that was the way I was going to end it, with her going back at the end of winter break. There was another plan for Undeniable that would have carried it all the way through to the end of the school year. But the more I looked at it, the more I could see a complete arc in it ending there. And like, the way it actually wouldn't have ended at the end of winter break. It would have ended about a week into the new semester, with Rachel working with Rose, and you would kind of find out like the projection of what's going to happen with Rachel's play. And like, you know that Quinn and Rachel are okay, and you know that there's going to be some resolution in Rachel's past with the play, and everything kind of all comes full circle. So the alternate version of that would have been, if we went through the spring semester, it would have gone much faster. There would not have been that much stuff in the spring, but the stuff in spring would have focused for Rachel on her processing, like, through helping put on this production of the play that she wrote, you know, her being able to fully let go of everything that happened to her in high school, and, like, her dealing with this play is how she truly gets her fresh start, and she needs that. Like, Rachel has to be able to process the past in order to really be able to accept Quinn into her life fully, and that's why that was so pivotal, like, for her to be able to get over, like, a lot of those insecurities that were so linked to Quinn and fully have that fresh start. And then with Quinn, it would have been all about, you know, her continuing to figure out her newfound lesbianism, because Rachel's, like, you know, doing her thing, she's in theater, she's alright, but then there's Quinn, who's had her whole own, like, identity crisis that, though it's been linked to Rachel, isn't completely absorbed, like, by Rachel. And so being at Yale, she gets more involved with the LGBTQ community, because I feel like that's something that Quinn would need more than Rachel would need in college. And so a huge part of that is, like, you get to see Quinn develop more of her social sphere and grow into her own person, and that's how Quinn and Rachel are able to have this healthy relationship, because they're both their own people, but they're coming together, you know? And so that's how Olivia would have tied back in, is because Olivia is linked to the queer community there. They develop this friendship. It's platonic. Sorry for those of you who loved Quinn and Olivia. I'm with you. I have a whole other alternate headcanon with them where they end up together instead. But they're friends, and Quinn continues to grow in that, and also begins to deal with her religious identity in the context of her sexual orientation. And it ends with them at the end of the semester getting an apartment together in New York City for the summer, where they're just going to be working and living life together and being total dorks. So those are the two different paths that would have taken. I most likely would have written the one where it ends a week into the into the second semester, because I talked to my beta Sky, love you Sky, about kind of just the arc, and it would have been a complete arc without going through the whole spring semester, I think. So that is undeniable. And I don't regret going more towards a place in my life where I wasn't using writing as my only outlet, but, you know, I do regret that I wasn't able to finish it, and that I still don't think I'm able to finish it. So I hope that helps a little bit. You can at least see how it all kind of links together. Yeah, and this is my blog now, Star Chaser Tonight. So if you want to ask me questions, you're free to. Otherwise, how about that Glee Season 4, huh? I'll just, yeah.